ever heard the phrase, "I know you want it"? Quick show of hands. If you haven't heard it said, you've probably heard it sung. I know you want it, I know you want it. Does this sound more familiar? Because this was a line that was stuck in all of our heads last year, right? When Robin Thicke's song, Blurred Lines, was #1 on the summer charts. Now, Blurred Lines is a song about how, as a night progresses, and as the singer and this woman he is dancing with get more and more drunk, he knows one thing with absolute certainty, that she wants to engage in sexual activity with him. He knows she wants it. But how does he know she wants it? "The way you grab me must want to get nasty" is one of the more poetic lines from the song. "Can't let it get past me," he continues, again referring to the fact that he knows she wants it. But how does he know she wants it? We never actually hear her voice in the song. She doesn't actually verbally communicate anything to us. We don't know what she's thinking. But Robin Thicke describes her genes. He describes the way she's dancing, that she's touching him, and that she wants to hug him. So is she in some non-verbal way communicating her consent to the sexual activities he describes? Are there non-verbal languages of consent? That's what we're here to talk about today. Now, a language is a medium of communication through which the person we are interacting with infers some meaning. So a language of consent is the way we communicate our consent to sexual activity. But what is consent? Now, I work with a nationwide campaign for gender equality called No Country for Women. And among the things that we do is conduct workshops in schools and colleges and other institutions where we have conversations about things that people aren't really comfortable talking about. Because in our country, not everyone is comfortable talking about sex. And so they're definitely not comfortable talking about desire and when it's legitimate to act on it. I know that when I was in high school, like most of the audience here, I had never actively thought about consent. I didn't think I had to because I wasn't sexually active at the time. But we need to talk about consent because sexual assault is not just a stranger groping you on a bus. A consent violation is not divided into black and white extremes of rape and a bunch of other trivial stuff that doesn't matter. Consent matters at every point of time. Whether you're 14 years old and you're too nervous and therefore unwilling to kiss your significant other for the first time, whether you've been married for 15 years and don't want to engage with your spouse for the night, consent always matters. So what is it? Consent is a vocal expression of our eagerness and desire to engage with our partner in sexual activity, and it is actively, enthusiastically, and freely given. Now that's a whole bunch of words. So let me try and simplify it. Consent is an explicit yes or no, which is verbally communicated, where yes means yes and no means no. Now that seems a little oversimplified, right? Because what else could no mean? And aren't we saying yes in a bunch of other ways every day through signs and signals that we're giving off? Why does it have to be explicitly yes out loud? We think it necessarily has to. Because our bodies are masses of hormones and chemicals and nerves and desires, and yeah, some of them are sexual, but we might not always want to act on them. We make decisions every day about what to wear, where to go, what to eat, but these might not be sexually motivated. But if we open ourselves up to the idea that there are non-verbal languages of consent, we have to open ourselves to all of the interpretations of these languages. You might not see that you're doing something in a certain way, but somebody else could enforce their interpretation upon your actions. For instance, I'm standing here in a dress. I'm expressing a strong opinion. I'm talking to an audience which includes members of the opposite sex. Any one of these could be interpreted as a sign of my consent. People in our country have said things like, if you use a mobile phone, if you eat chow mein, If you ride a scooter, you are asking for rape. So we don't go out, we don't make friends of the opposite sex, and we don't wear skinny jeans because we're absolutely terrified that someone will make an enormous consent leap. Now, a consent leap is when someone reinterprets your actions in a way that you do not want them to. When they see your decisions as indicative, as a promise of sexual activity in the future, that sexual activity is a natural progression. It is when somebody tells you that you want it when you don't really want it. It is when somebody tells you that you are asking for it because of something you apparently communicated in a language that you did not know you were speaking. These are some of those languages. Last year, a woman was raped in an Uber cab on her way home. A lot of people were angry about this, but not necessarily for the right reasons. They weren't angry at the rapist for raping a woman. They were angry at the woman for being drunk, as if by having a few drinks, she had forfeited her right to her own body. She had forfeited her right to consent. Now, what that implies is that every one of us here who has ever had a drink, and I sincerely hope that's only the legal adults in this audience, every one of us who has ever had a drink has been opening ourselves up to having our body touched by anyone who wanted to. Behavior. An online listicle told me that if a boy texts me while he's playing a video game, he definitely wants me. Another one told me that if I flip my hair at a boy, if I had the hair, then I would be telling him that I want him to run his fingers through it. Seemingly less amusingly, one of the rapists from the 2012 Nirbhaya rape case went on record and said, well, if she didn't want to get raped, why was she out that late? Clothing. A popular Malayalam singer last year said that girls shouldn't wear tight t-shirts and jeans because they invite the wrong kind of attention. This is a sentiment that is expressed by a lot of people, as if by wearing certain clothes, you are then responsible for any violation that you have to suffer. But this is so contextual, right? Because if I wear skinny jeans in one locality, it could be seen as consent. But if I wore traditional Indian clothes, like a ghagra choli, which exposed my midriff, another locality could interpret that as consent. Unfortunately, it's not just a few individuals who believe in non-verbal languages of consent. There are also institutions that believe so, such as the institution of marriage in our country. 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court yet again passed a judgment in which they said that marital rape is not a real thing, that marital rape is not a real crime. The woman had alleged that her husband was forcing flashlights into her vagina, but the Supreme Court said it didn't matter. It was a personal issue. Now, whether you are married or unmarried, whether you are a husband, a wife, or just another person, you are still an individual, and you still have a right to say no. There is no such thing as permanent consent, not even prior consent. Just because you kiss somebody once, it doesn't mean you want to kiss them again or go further. And just because you don't physically resist someone, it doesn't mean you are asking them to come closer. In another sparkling judgment last year, our judicial system drew a distinction between forced sex and forcible sex. A woman presented with bruises around her vagina, and they said that if she actually didn't want to have sex, she would have bruises on other parts of her body. Now, we cannot always assume that a person is in a position in which they can physically resist. They can be severely intimidated. They can be emotionally or mentally compromised. They can just be not strong enough. But all of these are seen as non-verbal languages of consent. Working for No Country for Women, I hear a lot of stories. Not just these large and dramatic ones, I hear a lot of personal stories as well. Last year, we ran a campaign called Break the Silence, in which people sent us anonymous and true stories. And this one in particular stood out. A woman is on a motorcycle with her husband at 9 p.m. Men on another scooter start harassing her. But when they go to the police station to complain, the officer refuses to take them seriously because she did not non-verbally indicate that she was not asking for it. She was not wearing a Mangal Sutra and a Sindoor as married women in India, married Hindu women in India traditionally do. What she was wearing was jeans. What she was doing was being out after dark with a member of the opposite sex. These were interpreted as non-verbal languages of consent, and this is what the police officer tells her. He can't blame the boys. She was asking for it. But you are not asking for it unless you are asking for it out loud. You have a right to your own body. You decide what you want to do with it, if you want to do something with it, how far you want to go with it, and when you want to stop. You do not owe your body to anyone else based on how they interpret your body. I didn't always see things that way. I'm really impressed today because when I was in high school, I was not as smart as a lot of the people here. I was under the entirely gendered assumption that boys never say no and good girls never say yes. Now, this is a highly problematic idea. This is the biological language of consent, where we think that because of the levels of testosterone that men have, they are always eager and willing and enthusiastic for any sexual activity with any woman. But not every man wants to kiss every woman, and there are certainly men who don't want to kiss women at all. They'd rather be kissing other men. But we believe that boys always want it. So we completely delete the idea of male sexual assault from our conversations if we are having them. The singer Chris Brown apparently lost his virginity at age 8 to a girl who was twice his age. But we see this as proof of his masculinity and not as a gross sexual violation of a young child. A similar idea is the idea that good girls never say yes and bad girls never say no. Now, what this does is creates this huge gendered power imbalance, because we think that boys will always say yes, but only bad girls say yes. So if you are a girl and you are claiming your rights over your own body, you are a bad girl. And what is a bad girl, and why do we think that they never say no? In this instance, a girl lies to her mother, she goes out late, and she is drinking. When I was in high school, these were my definitions of a bad girl. But then she is raped later on that night. If we believe that those three actions were behavioral languages of consent, we are saying that it was her fault. We are saying that she was asking for it. We are perpetuating a system that justifies, apologizes, normalizes victim blaming, where we don't get angry at the rapist for raping, but we get angry at the victim for putting herself in a certain position. Well, how is her position any different from the millions of other people, not just women, who get sexually violated every day when they're completely sober, when they're at home, and when it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon? You have a right to your own body, and you are not asking for it unless you are asking out loud. You decide if you feel desire and when you want to act on your desire. And when you do decide that you want to act on your desire, you need to express this out loud, because almost all of us feel some amount of desire, but we are also thinking rational beings. We are capable of making decisions, and we need to be able to communicate them in languages over which we have control. Not in languages that someone else is interpreting, not in languages that we don't know that we are speaking.
You might have been inappropriately touched on a bus. You might have been kissed by your best friend and not known how to stop them without hurting their feelings. You might have gone further than you were comfortable with your significant other, but gone along with it anyway because you thought that's just what couples do. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a party when the boy I was dancing with tried to kiss me. I stopped him, but he said, "I know you want it. Your lips are saying something, but your eyes are saying something else. But what mattered was what my lips were saying, an explicit and verbal no, which meant no, and not try again harder. In Robin Thicke's song, he keeps singing, I know you want it. But how does he know? The only
Way he could have known that she wants it if she said so out loud. Thank you.